weeks in Pittsburgh and haven't seen since. Well, she's going to come stay with us and possibly move to Chicago. And I thought what anyone who had recently moved into a new apartment in a new city with their best friend would think, which was, I've made a huge mistake. I thought, Ethan, I'm sure Jenn is nice, but you're in a big city now, and you're overestimating the difference between one young woman and another. So she came in September, and my doubts lasted about as long as the flight from Pittsburgh International to Chicago O'Hare. And if I had any lingering reservations, they were dispelled when she visited again that winter. And by the time she took an apartment a few blocks south of us the following summer, I rather strongly suspected that we all end up in a place like this. That first visit in September, as I recall, Jenn was applying to grad school, and Ethan was working 3 jobs as an actor, as a tutor for the ACT, and as a waiter and cashier at a restaurant where the staff and owner regularly raided the bar as soon as the shift began. When Ethan and Jenn didn't have $2 to rub together, they would scrape the bottoms of their bank accounts and share an ice cream at Forever Yogurt. This was always a specialty of theirs, the dollar date nights. My memory, as I've already confessed, can be poor, but I remember something Ethan said from that summer very clearly. The date, he said, is going for a walk together. It's having a conversation and holding hands. The frozen yogurt is an excuse for a walk. Eventually, Ethan saw Jenn off, and together they took the bus to the train to the airport, a long enough journey that she had almost touched down in Pittsburgh by the time he returned home. The second trip had already been planned, and during this period, after her first visit to Chicago and before the third, I observed a subtle change come over Ethan. Their primary means of communication, both at the time and for quite a while after, until they moved to New York, was Skype, the face-to-face conversation technology. And they had for those who didn't know, so they had a standing nightly appointment. And I noticed during this period that on those rare occasions when Jenn had an obligation that prevented her from talking on Skype, Ethan would get a little funny. Usually it was kind of mild mania, like, well, Jenn can't talk tonight, how would you like to play all the games in the apartment? and sometimes he was a little in a sour mood. And again, these were subtle shifts. He didn't become a raving maniac, but he felt it. After the second visit that winter, which was smooth if a little overbooked, as I recall, Ethan explained his anxieties like this. I don't know when I'm going to see her again. There is pressure to make every moment special. I can't wait until we spend time together and it doesn't feel special, it feels normal. As Ethan's roommate, can I drop the mic? Can anyone hear me? As Ethan's roommate, my story thus far is naturally prejudiced towards his point of view, but towards the end of that second visit, Jenn and I had started to become closer. And by the third visit, the following summer, when Jenn stayed in an apartment a few blocks south of us and worked in an office, she and I would occasionally get together on weekends at a local tea shop while Ethan was busy at one of his many jobs. And one of our conversations, I think, will stay with me for the rest of my life. We were talking about Jenn's roommate at the time, and hers was a sad tale. Her marriage had fallen apart. Misinformation and lies. This poor woman was left feeling friendless, alone, and as if the man she had been married to for years was a stranger. My idea was that from the woman's point of view, it was unavoidable. She met someone, she fell in love, she was welcomed into his family, and through no fault of her own, her whole world fell apart. It was my philosophy of life from high school up until a few minutes later when Jenn made her reply. That luck is perhaps the largest determinant in whether a marriage is successful. I made the point that people change far more than they themselves think they will change, whether that's over 5 years, 10 years, 20. It was my belief until Jenn shattered it, that whether two people develop along similar paths or diverge, whether two trees will intertwine or choke each other at the roots, has nothing, or practically nothing, to do with the choices people make, and everything to do with chance. Now, as some of you are aware, Jenn has this really unusual conversational habit. She looks you full in the face and listens with her whole attention. Really listens to what you're saying instead of doing what the rest of us do, which is politely waiting for our turn to speak. So Jenn listened and took a little time to answer, and because she's a gracious person, she conceded that some of what I said made sense, but she began, I will always remember this, people are not dice. Nor are they trees, nor are they paths. What they are almost infinitely complex bundles of likes and dislikes, aspirations, fear, pride, past traumas, and a million other quirks and moods, some of which don't even have names. While people will always surprise you, or at least, she continued, I hope that they'll always surprise you, you can learn through spending time with the person something of their boundary conditions. You help them to achieve their aspirations and overcome their fears. And if you're very careful and maybe a little lucky, you'll find someone who will do the same for you. I caught a glimpse of how the world looked through her eyes, but I'm a stubborn person, and I challenged her again. This sounds nice, achieving aspirations, overcoming fears. It's grand, noble, romantic, the opposite of everyday life, which has as many disappointments as triumphs. Some goals will never be achieved, and some traumas are too deep. What is that if not luck? How are we, puny little individuals that we are, supposed to deal with all that? So she listened and took another of her little pauses. And she said, I don't think it's anything special, and I don't think it's a secret. It's time, that easy to accomplish and that difficult. Time spent together. It's going for a walk, having a conversation, and holding hands. That's all you can do, but I think it's enough. Remember I said earlier that by the end of the third visit, I rather strongly suspected that all of us would end up together in a place like this. When I heard Jenn, either consciously or unconsciously echoing the words that Ethan had said, that was the moment I knew.